Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something pretty unique, actually. We're pulling back the curtain on the justice system, taking you right inside the Royal Court of Guernsey.
It's not every day you get this kind of access.
Exactly. We're not just talking about a case. We're diving directly into the judge's own sentencing remarks for a man named Richard Thomas Clark.
The charges are serious. Robbery, burglary, drug supply, a real mix.
It is. Our goal here is really to uncover how a court, painstakingly weaves together the crime, the consequences, the person's character to deliver a judgment. How does that whole process actually work?
Well, what stands out for me here is that our mission isn't just recounting facts like you'd get in a news report.
Right.
We want to understand the kind of intricate machinery of how justice is delivered. What specific factors do courts weigh up?
Yeah.
And what's the real impact, the ripple effect on people and the community? It's about getting that granular perspective.
And just to be absolutely clear for you listening, every single detail we're sharing today comes straight from the court's official sentencing remarks.
No speculation here.
None. It's a raw, unfiltered look at the legal proceedings. It gives you a direct window into the court's thinking. Okay, so let's begin with probably the most disturbing part, the robbery. This happened on April 30, 2024 at the Vail Service Station.
And the timing is crucial, isn't it? Early hours.
Yeah, picture this. It's 3:30 a.m. Jamie Marsh, who's 60, he's just starting his shift. The shop doors open, and then Clark enters. The court documents describe him as looking furtive.
That word itself sets a tone.
It does. And what followed was just described as a sustained and vicious attack. The court records detail Clark repeatedly punching Mr. Marsh head, chest, back.
It's a brutal.
He even kicked his face and head while Mr. Marsh was on the floor. And the brutality, it just escalated. Clark was seen straddling him, pinning him down by the throat, still punching him, then picking him up, throwing him back down.
Relentless.
And Mr. Marsh recounted Clark threatening to use a knife. Now, no knife was actually seen. That's important.
But the threat was made.
Exactly. Clark then demanded money. Mr. Marsh, trying to comply, makes it to the back office, hands over 2 money boxes. About 2,000 pounds in cash inside.
Wow. And the impact on Mr. Marsh, you mentioned his victim impact statement. The court described it as lifelong.
Absolutely devastated.
Physically. I mean, the injuries were extensive. A fractured jaw, damaged teeth needing a lot of work, this apparent stamp mark on his chest, a fractured knee.
Awful.
But it goes beyond the physical, right? The psychological trauma. His statement talked about ongoing nightmares, persistent headaches stopping him from working, feeling isolated, wary of people, which really raises that important question. How does a court even begin to grapple with that level of profound, lasting harm to a victim?
And how does it factor into the sentence?
Well, and the key insight here, especially for Guernsey's system, is that this kind of impact isn't just, sad background detail. It's meticulously documented.
Right.
And it becomes a primary driver for the sentence severity.
Right.
Especially in a place like Guernsey that emphasizes deterrence. It signals that the victim's long-term suffering is weighed just as heavily, if not more so, than the act itself.
That's a really powerful point about how victim impact shapes the court's view. But as horrific as that robbery was, it wasn't the only thing Clark did in April 2024.
No, there was a string of offenses.
Let's look at the others. April 14th, he burgled Doyle Motors convenience store, forced his way in, stole $3,177 worth of lottery scratch cards.
Scratch cards, specifically.
Yeah, and here's a, bizarre detail from the court records. He actually went back to the scene while the police were there investigating.
You couldn't make it up. What was he thinking?
Who knows? Then, between April 9th and 14th, phone analysis showed he was involved in supplying cannabis, a Class B drug.
Although the prosecution did concede, fairly, that this was at the lowest street level.
Yes, they were clear on that. And finally, another burglary was taken into consideration during sentencing. April 1st, he forced entry into Odie and Joey's, stole $1,444.80 in cash.
So when you look at this whole sequence, robbery, burglaries, drug supply, all within a few weeks, what's really striking is the police work.
It sounds incredibly thorough.
Oh, absolutely painstaking. They used everything: CCTV, items he discarded, forensics, sophisticated mobile phone, and cell site analysis.
Modern policing techniques really coming into play.
Critically important. These techniques were crucial in linking Clark to each offense, even when he denied things or just said no comment in interviews.
Right, exercising his right to silence.
Exactly. And if you zoom out a bit, this really shows how vital that comprehensive, evidence-led approach is. It's what secures convictions and ensures justice, especially when offenders try to dodge responsibility.
It certainly paints a clear, almost undeniable picture of the evidence against him. So all these crimes led to the sentencing hearing. That took place in the Royal Court Full Court on April 28th, 2025.
Presided over by Judge Catherine Maureen Fuchs.
And a panel of jurats. Now, jurats in Guernsey are interesting. They're lay members, kind of like a jury.
But with a key difference.
Right. They don't just decide guilt or innocence. They actually join the judge in deciding the sentence.
Which brings in that crucial community perspective on justice, doesn't it?
It really does.
And this brings us to another interesting point. The specific Guernsey approach to sentencing, especially for violent stuff like robbery.
How does it differ?
Well, while they look at the English sentencing guidelines as a helpful guide, the court explicitly says Guernsey applies Guernsey considerations with a substantial deterrent element.
A substantial deterrent element. That sounds significant.
It is, and it's a principle backed up by their own court of appeal in cases like Ryder v. Law officers. What's fascinating here is how local legal traditions and, frankly, community values actively shape things, often leading to a stronger focus on deterring crime than you might see elsewhere.
So that deterrent element, how much does it typically shift the sentence compared to, say, standard English guidelines? What does it tell us about Guernsey's values?
Well, it sends a very clear message, doesn't it? To the community, to potential offenders. Serious crime, especially violent crime, will have serious consequences here.
No messing around.
Pretty much. While guidelines provide a framework, Guernsey courts have the latitude, and seem willing to use it, to impose sentences that strongly reflect the island's commitment to public safety. It feels like a deliberate choice to prioritize deterrence.
Okay, I see. So with that Guernsey context in mind, how did the court approach Clark's sentence?
They started, logically, with the robbery. That was clearly the most serious offense. And they assessed an initial starting point for just the robbery at 8 years imprisonment.
Right, 8 years is the initial baseline, but that wasn't the end of it, was it? There were aggravating factors.
Long list of them. These are things that make the offense worse in the eyes of the court.
So what were they in this case?
First and foremost, the extreme physical and psychological harm to Mr. Marsh. That was number one.
Understandably.
Then, the fact Clark was high on drugs during the robbery. Plus, the threat to use a knife, even if he didn't actually show one.
The fear that creates.
Exactly. The crime happening in the dead of night, adding to the vulnerability. There are also clear elements of planning, hiding his identity, turning off his phone to cover his tracks.
Trying to avoid detection.
Mm-hmm. And he tried to get rid of his clothes afterwards, destroy evidence.
Okay, what else?
A really key factor. His previous conviction for robbery back in 2002. That showed a concerning pattern of violent behavior.
So not a one-off lapse in judgment.
Not according to his record. And finally, the court looked at the wider impact, not just on Mr. Marsh, but on the other garage workers, the fear they must have felt.
Yeah, the ripple effect.
And the significant financial losses to the garage itself. It shows how one crime really does reverberate through a community.
So the court wasn't just like ticking boxes on a form. They were really looking at the whole picture.
Absolutely. They synthesized all those aggravating details. And weighing all that up, they decided that initial 8-year starting point just wasn't enough.
So they revised it upwards.
Significantly. They increased it to 12 years. And importantly, that 12-year figure included the burglaries that were taken into consideration.
Right.
This happened before they even looked at his personal mitigation.
Wow. So that shows how heavily those aggravating factors weighed.
It really does. It demonstrates how courts try to ensure every aspect of harm and culpability, victim impact, planning, past behavior, community effect, gets reflected in the initial sentence severity.
That's
complex calculation.
A very serious calculation. And just to tie off those initial figures, what about the drug offense?
Right. That was dealt with separately. The starting point for that was set at 3 years. The court noted this was the lowest starting point for Class B drugs under the relevant Richards guidelines.
Which are the specific Guernsey guidelines for drug sentencing.
Exactly. So before any discounts or personal factors, we're looking at a 12-year starting point for the robbery and burglaries and 3 years for the drugs.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Let's look at the defendant's side. Did he plead guilty?
He did. He pleaded guilty to the charges, which earned him a discount.
How much?
20% off the sentence. The court acknowledged these pleas came at the earliest opportunity procedurally.
Which usually gets you the maximum discount.
Usually. But the court also added a significant caveat. They pointed out he had little choice given the extensive evidence the police had gathered.
So the guilty plea was perhaps more pragmatic than purely remorseful in the court's eyes.
It seems that way. They gave the discount, but tempered it with that observation about the overwhelming proof. The remorse was viewed perhaps with a pragmatic lens.
Right. What about personal mitigation, reasons why he did it, his background?
He was quite limited, according to the remarks. Clark himself apparently admitted that April 2024 was the month I went nuts.
His own words.
His own words. He was described as being in a desperate state, no settled home, misusing drugs so badly that, in his words again, you do not even recognize your own behavior.
A desperate situation, certainly, but how did the court view that?
While acknowledging it as an explanation, the court pointedly stated this offered little comfort to the victims of your crimes, especially Mr. Marsh.
So, an explanation, but not an excuse.
Precisely. And it's crucial here to add the context the court did hear about his background. There was mention of significant trauma of your early life.
Oh, yeah.
And how he'd struggled to resettle after previous prison terms. His substance abuse was framed as him trying to numb yourself from those shocking life experiences.
So, a deeply troubled history.
Yes. And he did express deep regret for the robbery. Apparently, even wrote a letter of apology to Mr. Marsh and stated he wanted to build a better life. And what's really compelling, or perhaps challenging here, is seeing the court try to balance all that. Understanding the root causes the trauma, the addiction, but balancing that with the absolute necessity of delivering justice, protecting the public, upholding the law.
That tension must be immense.
It's a profound tension within the justice system everywhere, isn't it? Trying to see the whole person, the history, while still addressing the devastating impact of their actions.
So, when the court acknowledges these deep-seated issues like trauma or addiction, does that mean they see the offender as less culpable? Or is it more about understanding why it happened without necessarily excusing it?
It's definitely the latter, I think. It informs the context of the crime. It might influence, say, the rehabilitative parts of the sentence later on. But as the court explicitly stated, it offers little comfort to the victims.
Right.
The primary duty remains holding him accountable and protecting the community. The court seeks to understand the why, but not to absolve the whats.
That makes sense. And despite those expressions of regret and wanting to change, there was a social inquiry report, right? What did that say?
It presented a pretty stark assessment, actually. It concluded there was a very high likelihood of general reoffending.
Very high.
Yes. And specifically, a risk of future violence, particularly when he was under the influence of illicit substances.
Which links back to his state during the robbery.
Exactly. And this assessment led directly to him being registered as a MAPA subject.
What does MAPA mean, practically?
Multi-agency public protection arrangements. It's not just a label. It means he's formally identified as a high-risk offender. Upon release, he'll require strict, coordinated management by police, probation, health services, and potentially others.
So it underlines a serious, ongoing concern for public safety even after prison.
Absolutely. It flags him for intensive supervision and monitoring.
Okay, so the court has weighed everything. The horrific crimes, the deep victim impact, the aggravating factors, the limited mitigation, his troubled past, and this high risk of reoffending. Where did they land with the final sentence?
Right, the culmination of all that deliberation. For the robbery, Richard Thomas Clark received 9 years immediate imprisonment.
9 years for the robbery. What about the other charges?
For the Doyle Motors burglary, he got 4 years. But crucially, that was ordered to be served concurrently.
Meaning at the same time as the robbery sentence.
Exactly, so it doesn't add extra time. Then, for the drug offense, he received 2 years immediate imprisonment, and that was ordered to be served consecutively.
So after the robbery sentence?
Well, effectively added onto the main sentence length. So when you put it all together, it resulted in a total sentence of 11 years imprisonment.
11 years total. And that started from when he was first remanded?
Yes, effective from May 29, 2024. And this is where that totality principle we discussed earlier really comes into view.
Explain that again briefly.
Sure. You might look at the individual sentences, 9 years, 4 years, 2 years, and think they should just stack up higher. But the court explicitly applied the totality principle.
Meaning
they look at the overall sentence. They adjust individual sentences, often by making some concurrent or slightly reducing one, to ensure the total time served is just and proportionate to the overall criminality.
So it stops sentences becoming excessively long just by adding everything up.
Exactly. It avoids that purely mathematical approach.
Yeah.
The goal is a fair, holistic sentence that reflects everything, but isn't crushing or disproportionate. It's about finding that overall balance.
Okay, that makes the 11-year total make more sense in light of the individual parts. But given the high-risk assessment, the court didn't stop at just the prison sentence, did they?
No, they didn't. Recognizing that high risk, particularly around the robbery, they imposed an extended sentence license.
How long is that for?
4 years. And this period kicks in after he's released from the 9-year custodial term for the robbery.
So, extra supervision after prison, what's the stated purpose?
The court was very clear. Its purpose is preventing the commission of further offenses and securing your rehabilitation. It's explicitly about managing risk and aiding his transition back into the community.
And does this extended license come with specific rules?
Oh, yes. Very specific tailored conditions. These are designed to directly address the risks, identify the risk of harm, the risk of reoffending. Firstly, absolutely no contact, direct or indirect, with Mr. Jamie Marsh unless his supervising officer gives prior approval. Protecting the victim is paramount.
Makes sense.
Secondly, mandatory attendance and compliance with criminal justice substance services. That includes drug and alcohol testing and any treatment deemed necessary. Addressing the addiction issues.
Tackling a root cause.
And finally, a daily curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. But importantly, the court added a provision that this curfew will be reviewed before he's released and then monthly after that to make sure it stays proportionate to the actual risk he presents at the time.
So it's not just a blanket 4-year curfew. It can be adjusted.
Correct. It allows for flexibility based on his progress or lack thereof. And what's really revealing here is how these detailed long-term conditions try to manage that risk proactively and support rehabilitation within the community. It's a very comprehensive approach to public safety and offender management post-release.
It sounds like it. Beyond the prison time and the extended license, were there any other final orders from the court?
Just a couple. They ordered a £1,000 compensation payment to Mr. Marsh. That money actually came from cash found on Clark when he was arrested.
So some direct financial recompense, at least.
Yes. And they also ordered the forfeiture of his red iPhone, which was linked to the drug dealing.
Okay. And did the court have any final remarks?
They concluded by commending the police for their thorough investigation and also commending Mr. Marsh for his bravery throughout the whole ordeal.
Acknowledging both the police work and the victim's resilience.
Exactly.
Wow. So this deep dive into just one sentencing, it's really revealed so much, hasn't it? The intricate legal framework, the devastating, truly life-altering impact crime has on victims.
The painstaking work of the police.
And the really challenging, complex realities faced by offenders, often with these deeply troubled pasts we talked about.
And it really forces us, I think, to reflect on those multifaceted goals of the justice system.
Right.
There's the clear need to deter serious crime, that paramount duty to protect the public. But also that ongoing, incredibly difficult effort to facilitate rehabilitation for individuals who have these deep-seated issues, which raises that big question for society, doesn't it? How do we truly balance the need for punitive justice for victims with that long-term goal of preventing reoffending and fostering overall community safety?
That is the central tension, isn't it? A question right at the heart of any justice system. As we've walked through Richard Thomas Clark's case today, from those awful crimes to the court's really meticulous judgment, it's just such a stark reminder, not just of the human cost of violence and addiction, but also of the immense, ongoing, complex work involved in trying to achieve justice for victims and promote public well-being through rehabilitation and managing risks.
It's a continuous balancing act.
It really is. So for you listening, after hearing all this detail, what are your key takeaways? What stands out to you about the many often conflicting considerations that ultimately shape a court's final, very weighty judgment? Something to think about.